Hi Shreya. Hi Niloy. Sh- Shreya, I guess your voice is not that audible.
Hi Harsh, a very good evening
Good evening.
today.
Hello everyone. So a very good evening and yeah, thanks everyone for joining today and we are going to inaugurate our JWOC, that means the JGEC Winter of Code journey. And today we also have one guest speaker with us. So we are also going to hear from him. But Shreya, over to you. You can now start describing everything.
Thanks, Nilay. So, a very good evening to everyone present here. Also, a very good morning to all our overseas participants who have managed to join us, irrespective of the different time zones. So, hi, this is Shreya Paul from the organizing team of JWOC 2022. Presently, a third year student from computer science and engineering background from Jalpaiguri Government Engineering College. So, we are glad to have you all with us today in the inauguration ceremony of JGEC Winter of Code 2022. So, this year we are back with the third edition of JWOC, a very rapidly growing open source coding extravaganza. In the previous 2 years, we witnessed a great participants from over 900 students from over 100 plus institutions in India, with over 300 issues solved on GitHub by the end of the event. And this year, it gives us immense pleasure to see such an overwhelming response from not only college students but graduates all across India. So, as well as we are really great to have participants across the globe. Coming to the statistics this year, we have with us more than 1500 mentees, 50 plus mentors with 45 finally selected projects to work upon from 300 plus colleges, which includes more than 10 international colleges. Naming a few would be Columbia University, University of Texas, University of Ibadan from Nigeria, University of Georgia, University of Arizona, Trinity University from Lagos, Nigeria, and many more. So now coming to the timeline of our event, I would like to show the screen. So yeah, I'd like to go to the timeline of our event. Okay, so we announced our great event on 16th of January. Mentor and mentee registration started from 16th of January. We have our mentee registrations yet open till 30th of January, which is today. So approximately we have almost 5 hours left. If you haven't joined, if you haven't registered, please do register. Mentor registration, we are done with the mentor registration and projects are up in our website. And community bonding already started from 28th of January and it will be till 31st of January, community bonding. Now we have a coding phase. First round of coding phase starts from 1st of February till 1st of March. And that very day, on 1st of March, we'll have our second phase begins. 9th of March, we'll be ending our second phase. And tentatively on 14th of March, we'll be announcing our results. So now coming to the sponsors part. Before coming to the sponsors part, I'd like to go. Also, you can check out our projects here. We have uploaded all our projects. You can go and check the projects. And mentees, please do check the projects on which you are interested to work on. So, coming to the reward section, now I'm not in favor of disclosing the exact prices for which we have for our top contributors, but surely we are having something great and exciting. To mention a few, we have paid internship opportunities, coupons and free domains for top contributors, goodies and cool stickers for the contributors. We have master classes and workshops organized to help you out with all basic concepts and every concepts which are in demand and which you will be needing for the event. And of course, verified certificates for all students. And I would also like to mention that we have prizes for mentees and mentors both. So hope to see you in our event. Now coming to the sponsors part, it gives us immense pleasure to have the sponsors here. It would have been really difficult without the sponsors to have this event organized. I would like to give a great shout out to all the sponsors. Now we have our title sponsor, exclusive diamond sponsor, Top Coder. Coming to the golden sponsors, we have Prep Bites, Sashido, JetBrains, Reboot Marketing. Coming to the silver sponsors, we have Acture, Hack Club, and XYZ. Community partners to mention, we have Google Developers Club, GGEC, Geeks for Geeks, Geeks for Geeks, JGEC Students Chapter. We have Microsoft Learning Student Ambassador and Commuter. Coming to the certificate partner, we have Give My Certificate, and learning partner, we have Gitopia. Also, I would like to mention that JWC will give a great platform and experience to all those who are planning for Google Summer of Code or any other Summer of Code, national, international, and any other open source extravaganza. So, hope to see all the mentors and mentees having a great coding event ahead.
Great. So thank you, Shreya. Thank you for like explaining what is JWOC and what are the benefits and how JWOC actually works and what our mentors and mentees are going to experience in the next 1 month. And yeah, like we also have our Discord server. If you have already registered, you should join our Discord server for further communication with the mentors, and everything will be discussed there. If you have any queries, feel free to drop us a message on Discord, and we'll reply you as soon as possible. So let us now go to our next agenda, which is like our guest speaker. We already have Harshvardhan Mishra, who is our guest speaker for today. So yeah, I would like to like invite Harsh to the stage and give and ask him to give a short and introduction of him.
So, before we start, I would just like to give a brief introduction about Harsh, our guest speaker. He
Okay.
has been a SD intern at HackerRank, a software engineer at Quantsite, Mlh Fellow 2020, mentor at Outreach, and a lot more that we would like to hear from Harsh himself. So, I would like to invite you, Harsh, and a very good evening for our JWC. Entire team is grateful to have you today with us in our inauguration ceremony. Over to you, Harsh.
I guess I should be really obliged to be here because I have known Niloy for a very long time. And just as a coincidence, even I'm from Jalpaiguri. So it is great to be like participating in a open source program that is happening in the Jalpaiguri College. So that is even better. So hi everyone, my name is Harsh, and currently I'm working as an SDE intern at HackerRank with the editors and the platform team. Uh, I have also previously been a Google Summer of Code student at Metacall and the Google Season of Docs technical writer at Moja Global. Currently, I'm mentoring an outreach intern through the outreach internship program, and I regularly work around open source communities and development, and this is pretty much what I do. Uh, so I guess this like whole session is about getting started with open source. And the very best part about open source right now is that we have a host of like beginner friendly open source programs right now, which was not the case almost 2 or 3 years back. So back when I started open source back in 2019, my senior just told me to like participate in one program that was Hacktoberfest. We did not have any competitive open source program back then, other than Google Summer of Code and Outreach, of course, which is super competitive. So we started with Hacktoberfest, then we got introduced to Girl Script Summer of Code. And in 2020, this whole trend started of multiple open source programs coming up, specifically from student communities, technical societies, and some specific companies as well. So this is a very welcome change because even if you don't want to participate in these competitive programs like Google Summer of Code or Outreachy, just because like open source is not a competition, it is more of a collaboration. But because we have so many participants and so many prospective applicants that it simply becomes competitive. So if you want to have a very gentle and a very easy introduction to open source without going into the overhead of getting into competition and all of that, you can participate in these smaller open source programs under the guidance of experienced mentors. So I guess in that regard, JWOC is a quite a great platform. So if you have applied to it, if you are participating, you're already at a great place. So just give it your best and have a great start of your open source journey.
Thanks, Harsh, for like explaining about open source. So let me ask you, what is the main thing when it comes to the open source? When someone asks you about Harsh, what is open source? So what is the actual thing which comes into your mind?
So when someone says like what exactly is open source, so in general we just say that open source is something that is pretty much open, and anyone can just go validate, inspect, change everything as they would like to have it for. So open source software is basically like a kind of software that we can just inspect, change, and share with the others. So today, like I don't have the exact statistics, but I can dare say that almost 95 to even 97% of the software that is being built across the world is supported by some or the other open source package or some or the other open source library. For example, if today you have to build a web application, I'm pretty sure that no one can particularly think of like a private library or framework that they can use. Everyone will just go with any particular open source alternative. We have React, we have got Angular, we have got Vue.js, and this is what most of the startups, companies, and even big enterprises use today to build their web applications. The same thing happens for literally any other thing. Most of the cloud native technology today is open source. Talk about build packs, talk about Docker, talk about Kubernetes. Same thing goes for machine learning and deep learning as well. So open source has literally heralded the world in such a way where people rely upon transparency so that they can easily build the software. I guess most of you have heard about the recent fiasco that happened with the Faker.js library. The maintainer simply deleted most of the code base, and a lot of people literally face a lot of issues around that. So it led to a lot of discussions around like how viable open source is and how basically open source scales. But it also says like how many companies are dependent upon building open source projects. So they can either be a part of this change, they can like literally start developing open source packages of their own, or they can fund the contributors so that they can keep working on these packages. This is what Google has been doing. This is what a lot of other companies have been doing. So as an open source contributor, you get to participate in the development of this open source project. You are simply not cut away with the development of it. Like take, for example, Microsoft Word or Adobe Photoshop. These proper products are being used by millions of people across the world, but you don't get to participate in the development. It is simply a proprietary product. It is being built by the internal teams at these specific companies, and we don't have exactly any say on how this product can be developed and managed. But take any open source alternative and you can easily participate in the discussions around it. You can have a say on how this project should be developed, and you can also get to contribute in terms of code or documentation, or maybe you can even evangelize about the product. So there are tons of possibilities revolving around it, and it is upon our impetus on how exactly we want to go forward.
Great, great. So that's a like a very good definition about open source and like the open source culture. So let me ask you another question. Like it is raising in my mind, why do companies and the authors make their code bases open source? Why they make their software open source? What are the benefits of open
Hmm.
source?
So that's a pretty interesting question, because most of the author don't exactly want to gain the fame and the respect that they get right now when they are starting up. So it usually starts with a very simple problem. A software engineer working at some company realized that they're having this particular issue, and they knew that they have to build something to basically automate this or maybe like simplify this whole process. So what they do is like they basically write some code that does something. They club this code into a particular package, and they basically release this package to the world. They keep this in a repository which they keep public, and they just hope that if someone finds it's useful, they might start using it up. This is how most of the open source projects start. If I talk about popular libraries like NumPy and SciPy, like both of these are very important packages in the PyData and the scientific Python community. And both of these started from an academic point of view. The author did not like really wanted to like commercialize this or maybe like make this a very popular project or something like that. They just had a problem, and they just like collected some code, they wrote some code, they optimized it in such a way that people find it easy to use and easy to avail. And slowly people started realizing that this particular code has some importance. They can also contribute in its development. They can make it much better. And this is how projects started building up. Let me share another interesting anecdote. I work with a community called as a local stack. So for those people who are developing on AWS, AWS is hell costly. I have just been like build a few thousand dollars because of my AWS usage. So For these developers who want to build on AWS, but they want to like pretty much do it locally just for development and testing, we have got something called as local stack. So local stack will just give you an AWS cloud on your own personal laptop, and it will run inside a Docker container. You don't have to manage anything out there. So local stack started as a product at Atlassian. So Atlassian is a very big name in the tech industry. It builds some great products, Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, and more. So they started using like local stack inside their own company for simulating AWS environment. They put it on GitHub. It was completely open source. It started like gaining some traction among the other developers who wanted to use AWS, and slowly it blew up. Today, local stack has almost 38,000 plus stars and almost 8,000 plus community, and they are like a proper company right now. They are not aligned with Atlassian as of now. So this is literally like how open source starts. Many people don't exactly have any ambitions of making some money out of it or basically gaining some profit out of the project that they are building. It just addresses a need, and simply because they want the others to also adopt this and basically use it to address their own purpose, they simply keep it open source. In some companies, there is also even a fight around making the projects open source. One of the best examples of this is Kubernetes. So Kubernetes was originally built at Google, and Google didn't had like any specific plans of open sourcing Kubernetes. But simply because the engineers knew that Kubernetes solved a very critical problem in the container-based technology, they had to open source it to CNCF, and now Kubernetes-based variants are being used by almost every company right now for building and scaling their cloud-native applications. So that pretty much summarizes your question.
Yeah, exactly. So, if I ask you, like, why people should contribute to open source software and different kind of open source ecosystem, what are the benefits they will get after contributing to open source?
So again, there are various reasons behind this, like and the different perspectives as well. Let me take the perspective of a student because I'm pre-assuming that most of us seeing this session or might see this session are students. So for a student, like I'm coming from a college which is not that good. We don't exactly have a very great placements. We don't even get on-campus internships, and we don't have like a lot of opportunities. Even the peer culture is not that great, and we have to like rely upon self-learning and getting connected with people outside the college to basically get started up. So I was like sitting in a library one day. I was like searching for internship opportunities, and I had just failed my internship interview. Like that was back in my second year. So one of my seniors came to me and he said like you should start contributing to open source. And the very first project that I contributed to was a simple data structures and algorithms library. Nothing fancy at all. But that simply gave me the start that what I can do right now is to basically get started with open source, and I can easily contribute to some of the packages or some of the projects, and I can develop my experience on top of it. So this incident was back in 2019. Fast forward to 2021 and 2022. I have contributed to over 50 plus projects right now. And some of these projects are literally used by some big tech companies. So if I should name some of them, like I have contributed to Uber's Causal ML, Google's Trax Turbinia, Microsoft's Double NI, and more of them. And this list simply goes beyond. So if you're a student and you want to contribute to open source, that will open a lot of gateway and opportunities for you. Even my recent internship at HackerRank basically came because of my open source contributions. So if you're contributing to open source, you get to meet a lot of people across the world. You don't just get to meet like the college students like you. You get to meet some of the people who have been in this industry long before you were even born. And that gives you a lot of leverage because you get to be mentored by them, you get to be guided by them, and you make a lot of contributions to the software that a lot of people are using today. So slowly you start building your experience, and with that experience, you start building your portfolio as well. And this portfolio will be highly beneficial for you if you want to apply to some big tech companies, or maybe you want to go into consultancy side, or maybe you just want to show your technical skills. Everything simply counts. From a professional's point of view, because professionals are not driven by some open source programs, or they might not be driven by learning and all, because they're already working in a company almost on a full-time commitment, and they don't really like should be involving with open source unless until they are like powered by something that they want to do. So if in a company you are a professional, you are like using any particular open source package and you just came across a bug, so what you can do is like you can just create an easy fix, and you can deliver a patch to that particular project, and they would really appreciate it. Because the best open source contributors are those who already have some open source experience. Sorry, the best open source contributors are those who already are using that particular project. So it makes no sense if you are like trying to contribute to a project that you have not used yourself. So this is where a professional's point of view basically comes into limelight. So since they have already been contributing, they have already been like working on that particular project, they already know what kind of bugs, what kind of issues that they are facing, and they can easily like raise contributions for that. So everyone is driven by different motivations. Someone just wants to learn. Some people are particularly driven by their motivation to contribute to some open source program like Google Summer of Code or Outreachy. Everything is fine unless and until like your contributions are positive and it is constructive. Once it goes on the destructive side of it, once you start raising patches that make no sense, or just simply wasting someone else's time, or maybe you are just like breaking all the test suite, all the continuous integration pipelines, the maintainers will have to stop you then and let you know that your contributions are not appreciated. But that is a very rare case. So just find your niche, find what exactly motivates you to do open source. It is not for everyone, just like competitive programming is not. So just go ahead and start contributing.
Great, great. So I think people will now get a clear understanding of why they should contribute to open source software and why like open source software are like more appreciable compared to like closed source software. So yeah, again, if we think about a very beginner's perspective, like a first year student or a second year student who does not have any idea about open source, like how to start your open source journey, how to
Mhm.
contribute to those big projects, because what they normally find that the code bases are like very large, they have huge files and some steps to configure to set up locally. So how they can just get started with those process?
So if you're a beginner, try to dedicate some time in learning the basics. So I guess JGEC has a very good competitive programming culture. So I guess even over there, it is said that if you want to get started with competitive programming, first learn the data structures and algorithms. It won't make any sense to do competitive programming without even knowing the basics. The same thing goes for open source. Open source is not very distinct from real world software engineering. You go to any company, you try contributing to the code base, you will see the situation is very much simulated in a similar open source project as well. You take up issues in an open source project. In any company, you take up Jira tickets. You raise pull requests in both of the places, even at a company, even in an open source project. You get to collaborate with the maintainers in an open source project, and you might be collaborating with your mentors or with your senior managers or someone like that in your own company. So if you want to start with open source, learn the basics at the very least. There are various ways in which you can contribute to open source without even coding, and we really appreciate that. But if you want to go on the coding side of it, try to learn at least a basic language. It can be Python, it can be C++, it can be JavaScript, it can be Rust, it can be anything that you have a particular interest in. And once you found your calling, just go ahead and first start contributing to some basic projects, because it totally makes sense that you might be making a lot of mistakes and you need a bit of hand holding to get started contributing. Because first time you might not know how to create a branch in Git. Second time you might not know how to solve a merge conflict. Third time you might not know how to do a rebase operation. So someone like who has some bandwidth, they would be better able to guide you in this whole process. So this is why I suggest that if you want to start up, first try contributing to any smaller project. This is where these open source programs like JWOC or the other open source programs comes in. So because the maintainers have like taken up a responsibility, so they would be like helping you out in all of this process and make sure that your contributions are getting merged. And once your contributions are getting merged, obviously you will get some sort of a self-esteem. You will see that, okay, I know these kind of things now, and this is the next challenge that I can take up. So now you go to any particularly like big organization and big project, and you start checking out on what kind of things that I can probably contribute to. So you get connected with some mentors, some maintainers. You tell them about like what your passion is, what your prior experience is, and then you just get started with contributing. Initially it would be very daunting, and this is where I have arrived at a concept called BFS and DFS. So this is a popular graphs concept, but this is applicable even in open source. So if you're picking up a project, first try to do a BFS, like a breadth first search. Don't go inside the code files, but just try to understand how this project has been structured. So if I show you any particular project, like let me share my screen so that it would be like easy for me. Um, just give me a moment. So I hope my screen should be visible now. So yes, so yeah, I have just pulled out a very like a project that I'm working on, which is local stack, and as you can see, like it has got a hell lot of files and a lot of directories, a lot of configurations and everything. So if you're starting up with any open source project, first try to understand how this project has been structured. So you might see that there are a lot of files here. There is setup.py, which is to configure the Python package. We have got the requirements.txt where all of the packages are defined and installed later. We have got the Docker Compose, which is for orchestrating all our Docker containers. We have got the make file to define all the build rules. We have got the Docker file. We have got the rest of the stuff. So try to understand what exactly this file is here and what role do they exactly play. This is very fundamental in understanding some of the more deeper concepts about some of the like how the open source projects are exactly structured. Once you do that, try to understand the directory structure. So we have the local stack here. So once you click on that, you will see that there are a lot of more subdirectories here. There is AWS, there is CLI, there is contrib, there is dashboard, runtime, services, utils. So utils contains all of the functions that we can use anywhere inside the code. We have got the CLI, which is the particular command line interface that local stack has. We have got the dashboard, which is pretty much how our infrastructure is handled. So try to understand how this files have been structured, how the directory has been structured, and what exact role do each of these play. For example, .github will contain all of the workflows that we want to run on each and every push or pull request that is associated with this project. Once you do that, try to do a DFS, which is depth first search. Try to understand on what exactly this piece of code does. So if I go to local stack, I go to CLI. So if I open the main.py, try to read through this code and try to see like what exactly this code does and what exactly does each of these lines are doing. Like if I see the logging here, I pretty much understand that this one is for logging some specific piece of code. So just to get started with this, try to explore the code base as much as possible. And once you have at least a basic understanding, try to create a local branch and try to break around things. So maybe try removing a line and try to see like how things are breaking right now. So make sure to play around with the project as much as possible so that you have a firm understanding of how this code has been structured. A really important piece here is to understand how tests are structured as well, because testing suite is the most important part of any open source project. Because if tests are breaking, chances are very high that your project, like your code, would not be merged. So try to understand how this test suite has been structured. What is the role of each of these? Like we have got the unit which contains all of the unit tests. Try to open any of these test suite files and try to see like how it has been structured, how it works, and what exactly it does. A lot of the open source projects also lack a proper test suite. So if you can contribute on that terms as well, that would be like really great. So these are like some of the ways in which you can get started with understanding big code bases and start with contributing on it. Make sure that your first contribution is really very small. You don't have to like deal with it for a very long time, and you can easily raise a quick fix and you can easily deliver on that, because that will help you understand the whole workflow behind this particular contribution and also help you bring some value into the project at the very start of it. So I hope that is pretty much helpful.
Yeah, I think that actually covers all the points for a beginner to how they can start their open source journey. And the same thing you can also find for the JWSC. That means all of the projects which are participating in JWSC, they have a different kind of tags. That means easy tag, medium tag, and hard tag. So if you are completely beginner and you don't have any knowledge about open source in depth, so you can definitely check for the easy tags, easy level issues, and you can just check those issues, what the issues is actually all about, and you can try to replicate the exact bug or that particular breaking thing in your local system. So just go through all the issues which are present in those particular repositories, and you can get started with you can get an idea about how you can explore other issues, and you can contribute to those medium and hard level issues. So yeah, again, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask in the chats, and we'll pick those questions and we'll try to answer those questions. Anything related to open source or anything in general related to any technology or related to JWC, anything, just feel free to drop your question in the comment box of YouTube. And let us move ahead with our next topic. Like that means Harsh is also like the Google Summer of Code student developer for 2021. So, Harsh, how one can just think about GSOC, that means Google Summer of Code, and how they can participate in Google Summer of Code?
So that's again an interesting question because if you're participating in Google Summer of Code, you must already be an open source contributor. So if today you go to the GSOC website, you check out the guidelines, the eligibility rules, it pretty much says that it is for people who are very new to open source. That was a statement that was true almost a decade back. It is not true right now because GSOC has been hyped so much right now because like everyone is trying to contribute beforehand. I have known people who have been contributing to some organization for past 1 year, just so that they can get selected into Google Summer of Code. So you might see that this whole scene is very competitive. I don't know about other countries, but in India specifically, it is very competitive right now, and there are like hell lot of roadmaps, sessions, workshops going around how you can get selected into Google Summer of Code. Even today, one of the YouTubers released a roadmap on Google Summer of Code 2022, and all of the GSOCers are like basically bashing him. So, so if you want to get started with Google Summer of Code, just go ahead with starting to contribute to open source. This is something that almost everyone will say at the very start. Uh, I literally planned not to go for Google Summer of Code unless until I found one particular organization that I was interested to work with, and I literally worked with them for only 3 weeks before getting selected. So you don't have to like spend a lot of time behind one organization contributing to them, but if you're already doing that, you're already at a very good place. So if you're a complete beginner, if you want to code for Google Summer of Code, try to find an organization that you have a particular interest in. This is first and foremost quite important because a lot of people pick organizations that they are not interested in. They're just interested for the perspective of Google Summer of Code. They might find the project easy, or they might see that there are not a lot of people applying to that organization, and they might just go ahead with it. And if they don't understand the code base, they will eventually fail because because getting selected into Google Summer of Code is far easier than actually passing Google Summer of Code. So Google Summer of Code has like got two evaluations, and unless and until you pass both of these evaluations, you will not be deemed as a successful GSOC participant. So that is even harder, and this is something that we need to make sure that we are doing very properly. So pick up an organization or a project that you have a particular calling in. So if you're interested in how browsers work, how the whole node engine works and all of that, you can go with something like Mozilla or maybe Chromium. If you want to work on some Python based projects, we have got CC extractor, we have got OWASP, we have got Opia. If you want to work on Ruby on Rails project, you can go with Public Labs. So try to find a particular project or an organization that you are interested in. And once you do that, start contributing to it. Your first few contributions will be very, very basic. Like it might include some basic patches and everything else. But trust me, once you start with the whole process, it will slowly get even better. Like if I remember my particular pull request that I created to my own Google Season of Docs organization, it is not Google Summer of Code, it is Google Season of Docs, which is for technical writers. My first patch was to just remove a Python library. So we had basically imported a library twice in the same code. I just removed that. I created a basic patch and I raised a pull request on that. And slowly, like I started contributing more to the organization. And this is like how I got my open source journey started over there. So same case in Google Summer of Code, you get to make some basic patches. Then you make some meaningful contributions, like maybe you write a big feature, or maybe you're fixing some bugs, or maybe you're improving the performance of something. And you just like basically progress ahead with the organization and do the all this stuff. So once you have a firm understanding that okay, this is the organization that I want to work with, then you start working on a particular proposal. This proposal might be related to the work that you are already doing, or it might be related to like a new feature or a new piece that you want to introduce to the whole project. And yeah, so create the proposal, send it over to the maintainers for a review. And once you have a definite understanding that okay, this looks good, you can apply to Google Summer of Code and you can just wait for the results to be announced to see if you really got lucky over now and whether you can work with the organization for further time or not. There is also an interesting catch here that there are some people whom I have known who did not get selected into Google Summer of Code just because the organization did not have particular slots. But if the organizations like your work, they would be really happy to have you, and they can pay you the same kind of compensation that they are paying to the Google Summer of Code participants. So don't just leave contributing to that organization if you're getting rejected or something like that. keep contributing, and you will eventually find the particular place where you can easily get started with.
Great, great. So that's a great journey and clear understanding about Google Summer of Code and how you can also participate and check out different organizations for Google Summer of Code. And the Google Summer of Code has also released the website for this year. And you can definitely check out the previous organizations and projects which participated in the last year and in the previous years also. And you can check out their repositories and you can try to make some fixes, which Harsh has already mentioned. So yeah, so one thing I have always heard that open source is not like all about just coding stuff. So we can
Yeah.
also make some doc fixes and some other things. So for that, I think Google has already the Google season of docs, right? So how
Exactly.
was your journey into Google season of docs and how you got selected and what exactly the work happens in Google season of docs?
So Google Season of Docs is pretty decentralized compared to Google Summer of Code, which is centralized on the other hand. So in Google Summer of Code, you have to apply to Google, and Google will be sending your proposals to the respective organizations, and organizations can take a decision based on your proposal. Google Season of Docs has an opposite methodology. What it does is like students have to approach the organizations particularly. So you have to like find specific orgs that you like to work with. You have to get in touch with them to see like what the selection process is. So some organizations have a very stringent process, maybe like you have to write a proposal. They can also have interviews with you. They can might send you some assessments that you need to complete to be considered as a Google Season of Docs participant. But once you are selected, you can work on a plethora of things. It doesn't mean that Google Season of Docs only work on documentation. I have personally worked even on the side of website development, maintenance, and optimization. So there are a lot of things that you can particularly take into, and this is something that organizations use to basically get the rest of the things done. So it can like work on documentation development, it can work on branding development, it can work on some website development as well. You might need to maintain a few projects, basically clean up everything so that it is easy for the maintainers and also the rest of the contributors to easily get started with the project. So you get to do a lot of things, and this is why Google Season of Docs is even longer than Google Summer of Code. Google Summer of Code goes for around 3 months. Google Season of Docs might go for around 6 to 7 months. And in Season of Docs, you get paid even more than Google Summer of Code. But that is equitable because Google Season of Docs has a slightly longer time period. So if you want to apply to Google Season of Docs, the best place would be the Season of Docs website. So just like Google Summer of Code, Google Season of Docs has a particular website, and it is a fairly new program. Like we only had 3 editions of it till now. So check out the organizations that have participated previously, and you might find some of the organizations that are participating repeatedly. So you can straight away go ahead and start contributing to them, and you can freely approach the maintainers or the people who are managing the mentorship programs to check out on how exactly someone can contribute through Google Season of Docs. In many cases, organizations consider the Google Season of Docs participant as contractors. I'm not sure like how many of you are familiar with this term, but you're treated as a contractor, so you might not get a lot of mentorship. You will be an individual contributor, and you will be paid like basically on the per hour work you're doing. So it is very different from what Google Season Summer of Code is. Google Summer of Code is more of a mentorship program. Google Season of Docs is more of a particular contract-based program. So you need to be particularly careful about that. So if you already have some experience with technical writing, that is very good. But if you don't have, then that would be slightly problematic.
Great, great. So, yeah, suppose someone is like UI UX designer or basically a designer. So, can they contribute to open source?
Definitely. So if I talk about the open source programs itself, you can like check out a lot of blogs in Google Summer of Code as well, where people like who are coming from a designing background have also contributed to open source projects. They might need to have some coding experience, but if you don't have that level of expertise, mentors and the maintainers will be like more than happy to have you guide on that. So if you're developing something like a system design, like a style guide for this organization or something like that, then you need to basically get your hands dirty with the code to execute that. In case of Google Season of Docs, a lot of organizations need the branding material. So they need the posters, they need the graphics, vectors, and all of that. So in that case as well, you can approach them as a like a UI UX designer or something like that, and you can work with them. Like in my organization, we had a particular volunteer. His name was Muhammad Warid, and he worked with us as a UI UX designer. So he was responsible for designing all the visual components, designing the whole user experience style guide and everything. That was helpful for us while developing the main website. That was our prime purpose during the Google season of talks. Uh, and even like if I talk about most open source projects, they have a really pathetic UI UX. So even if you don't want to like go with any open source program, you can still go ahead and like propose yourself. You can like show them some basic wireframes of some basic designs that they can particularly implement, and you can like start working with them. So a lot of possibilities here. You just need to like keep your mind open and check out on what exactly you want to do.
Great, great. So that's another like interesting fact which our audience should keep in mind, that coding is not the only thing which they can like accept for the open source. So there are lots of and several other opportunities for open source. And you have been also a part of Mlh Fellowship, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
So
that was
how was your journey? That's a lot actually. You have done so many things. Like uh,
so MLH Fellowship is very, very distinct from either Google Summer of Code or Google Season of Docs or any other thing. MLH Fellowship is more on nurturing the new software engineers. And I can like particularly say that if it wasn't MLH Fellowship, I would have never participated in any open source program. So MLH Fellowship is more modeled towards providing mentorship to young student developers. Most of them might not have any industrial experience, and MLH Fellowship as a program was modeled around bringing an internship alternative to students. So if a student already has some experience building personal projects or something like that, they can participate in MLH Fellowship. They can either build personal projects through the Explorer track, which is pretty much dead right now, or they can participate in open source track where they get to work on some open source projects, or you can participate in externship track, which is also dead. It is replaced by software engineering and I guess production engineering, if I can remember, where you get to work with some top tech companies in building and aiding with your software services. So it particularly depends on you on what exactly you want to go forward with MLH Fellowship. If you think that maybe you just want to like work on some personal projects as of now and learn the basics of collaboration, communication, and all, you can go with the Prep Fellowship program, which is a slightly lesser time duration. It goes for only like 1 month as of now, and you can just get to participate in a pod. You can get connected with a mentor, and you can see like how MLH Fellowship basically works. Once you have some basic understanding, once you have some basic confidence, you can go with either open source track or software engineering track. So open source is open for Indians, but software engineering tracks has some, what we can say, a limit for Indians to participate, because we have so many Indians applying to these kind of programs. So just be mindful of that. And remember that MLH Fellowship is hell competitive. It is even more competitive than Google Summer of Code sometimes. Uh, so just realize that what exact options you have, and whether you have a profile that particularly matches to what MLH is looking for. So remember, MLH Fellowship, Google Summer of Code, Google Season of Docs is not for everyone. People come from different domains, different backgrounds. You need to exactly understand on what exactly like you can work with. So don't pressure yourself in fitting to a particular limit. Just go above and beyond and see like what are the different kinds of things that you can do.
Great, great. So we have another program, open source program, that Outreach. You are currently mentoring the student developers for the Outreach 2022,
Yeah,
2021.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, 2021. So what is exactly Outreach, and can the Indian people and we can apply for that, or is there any criteria for that?
Definitely. So Indian people can surely apply for this. Even my own mentee is an Indian. She's from Aligarh Muslim University, and like basically outreach is modeled towards bringing people who are coming from diverse backgrounds in the technical sector. So if I like share my screen here, you can basically check this whole statement out, that it is bringing people who are subjected to systemic bias and impacted by underrepresentation. So if you're coming from an underrepresented section of society, like maybe you are a female, or maybe you're coming from the LGBTQ plus community, or maybe you don't have access to a lot of technical communities, technical understanding and all, you can surely go forward and apply to outreach. It is not restricted to males. Like this is a popular misconception that males cannot participate in outreach. They can, but outreach specifically puts their focus on underrepresented people. So if you think you're coming from this underrepresented section of society, please go forward with this. And outreach interns are supported by a very supportive mentorship, and they also get paid quite a lot. So in India, they basically get paid 7,000 USD, and they work for 3 months with the particular open source organization that they're applying to. It is not that competitive as compared to Google Summer of Code or Google Season of Talks or any other open source program, because they have like a two-way application process. So the first application is the initial application phase where they have to like write a lot of essays and everything. And this one is particularly quite hard because they ask a lot of questions about your background, about your prior experiences, and what kind of bias have they faced in the technical sector. And once they get selected into that, then they have to work with the organization for a specific period of time. I guess it is almost 1 month, when they have to make some contributions. They have to like get connected with the mentors, the maintainers, and exactly see on which project they want to work on. Outreach interns don't exactly have to write their own proposal. As sort of the final application, they have to just fill in a few basic essay questions, and the mentors overall make a decision whether they want to work with that particular intern or not. So if you want to like check out the people who have been selected into Outreachy, you can just go to the alums page of Outreachy, and you can check out all of the people who are working with different organizations. So Outreach is a very great program, I would say, and it is specifically made for beginners to easily get started. So if you're someone who like coming from an underrepresented section of society, just go forward and apply to Outreachy. Outreachy also happens twice a year, so you don't have to like wait every year for Outreachy to happen. So the first time it happens in a year, it is for Northern Hemisphere people. This is where Indians are located. And if you are someone who is hailing from a Southern Hemisphere country, maybe you need to apply around the months of November or December. So you just take a look at the applicant guide, and you can like easily understand on how Outreach has been structured.
Thanks, Harsh, for giving another like insightful thing about outreach, and people can definitely check out the outreach website and they can apply for the outreach program, and I think that will definitely help them. So we now have like few questions in the chat, so we can definitely try to answer them.
Sure.
So yeah, let me bring those questions. Soham Chaudhary is asking, how does the choice of license in repo matter, or does it matter much in open source?
For me, it doesn't matter much. I literally keep all my code open source under MIT license, and this gives everyone a chance to basically take a look at the code, copy it, use it, and change it as per their understanding. Choice of licensing becomes very tricky when you are building an enterprise software. So this is something that happened at my workplace as well very recently. So we were trying to integrate object storage inside our data science and MLOps platform. So we are building a platform that allows data science teams to put their entire data science lab on cloud itself using Kubernetes clusters. We wanted to have object storage so that they can easily access videos, images, text files, and everything. So we used a popular open source solution called as Minayo. So we used Minayo, we integrated it, and we were done. But one day a contributor came ahead and they said that Minayo has a restrictive license. So that means that we cannot use Minayo for our enterprise application. Because if we are using Minayo, we have to basically like contact them and give them the royalties that they deserve. So if you're building a very popular open source tool or a popular open source package, licensing will become very tricky then. So you need to consult with your lawyers and with the legal team to exactly understand what license should you go forward with. Because if you're going with a very loose license like MIT license or maybe Apache 2.2, chances are high that some big tech corporation can just kill you. This is exactly what Amazon Web Services did to Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch was a very popular open source project, but AWS simply forked it up. They created their own implementation on top of Elasticsearch, and they were offering it as an enterprise service now. So Elasticsearch had to basically go for dual licensing, and now they're restricting everyone who's trying to use Elasticsearch for the purpose of their own enterprise software. If you want to use Elasticsearch, you now have to literally pay them. So just keep in mind about what kind of project you're building. If you're already in a company and you are like looking to open source your solution that you built in-house, just make sure that you contact the legal team and understand about what sort of license would be good for you. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so I think Soham got the answer for this question, and we have another question, that is DSC important for Mlh Fellowship?
No. This is something that I don't think anyone like people would like to compete with anyone from JGEC, because like there are so many competitive coders and so many people good with DSC here. But unfortunately, open source programs don't really look for DSA as a skill set. A lot of people literally hate, like what we can say, mm, doing data structures, algorithms, and all. There is a very interesting tweet that I wanted to show you. So just give me a second, because this brings me to like, just give me a moment. Okay, so let me show this tweet. So I'm sharing my screen, and this is something that a lot of people would find it interesting. So this particular person is Max Howell. Max Howell is the creator of Homebrew. So Homebrew is a very popular package manager, and literally everyone who is using a Mac right now, even me, uh, if we have to like install a particular package or a software, like we have to install Notion, we have to install MongoDB, we just use Brew for that. So this guy created Homebrew. He interviewed at Google, but what he tweeted is like 90% of our engineers use the software you wrote, which is Homebrew. But since you cannot invert a binary tree on a whiteboard, so fuck off. So there is a very distinct difference between what big tech companies are looking for and between what actual software is being developed. So in no way it shows that DSA is better or like lesser than open source or anything like that. It just shows that we don't exactly need DSA or competitive programming in open source programs. So the only thing that you might need is problem solving skills. Problem solving skills is like a concept that goes both the ways. It goes both on the side of competitive programming, and it goes also on the side of development. So you need to have good coding skills, good analytical skills, so that you can solve real world problems. Even in Mlh Fellowship, while you're demonstrating your projects, you need to exactly tell them on what exact problem is your project trying to solve. Like my project was trying to solve the concept of misinformation and fake news. So you need to tell them that this is the solution I developed, and this is how it is solving a real world problem. Now, this real world problem can be solved using a particular data structures algorithm. Who knows? So just use your DSA skills, use a particular development stack, and come up with something that solves a real world problem. And you can easily get into any particular open source program, even Mlh Fellowship.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually true. Like problem solving skill is something which every developer or everyone should have. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, so we have another question in the chat box. So let me pull it. So what about Microsoft Reinforcement Learning Open Source Fest? How can we get selected and process? Can you please tell?
Again, I'm no person who like passes off unsolicited advice on something that I have not done myself. Unfortunately, I have not never been a part of Microsoft Reinforcement Learning Open Source Fest. I had a look at the requirements a few months back, and have completely forgotten them. So it would be like really great if you can connect with someone who has already done this program, or maybe Niloy can organize a particular session on this part. But unfortunately, I don't have any background information.
Yeah, you can definitely the person who just asked the question, they can definitely Google Microsoft Reinforcement Learning Open Source Fest, and they will get enough like articles and websites which basically tells him or her to what are the criteria and how it actually works.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we have covered all the questions, and if we don't have any questions, and if you have any questions, just feel free to drop in the chat anything related to open source or software development or anything in general. And yeah, so now let us like do something. Let us tell something like a different thing. That means we are going to like introduce our organizers to all of our audience. So Shreya, can you just share your screen and share the organizers tab so that we really like want to give a shout out to all the person who are working day and night for organizing this event. So we should appreciate their efforts also. So Sriya,
Yeah,
over
sure.
to you.
Yeah, sure. Just a minute. Okay, so this is our entire team for JWC 2022. Nilay, would you like to say?
Yeah, so we have our organizers. These are the organizers for JWC 2k22, and we are literally working day and night for the past 1 month to just keep things working. So we have worked on the front end, on the whole registration and projects backend, and keeping everything up and managing the database and contacting sponsors and several other things. So we have Utpalendu Burman in the organizing team. He is also the Google Summer of Code student developer for 2021 for CBCRM. And I am Niloy Shikdar. I am also the GDSC lead of JGEC, and I am also in the organizing team. We have Anubhav Sharkar. Anubhav Sharkar is also one of the members for in the organizing team, and he basically handles all the design part and all the like non-technical things. And we have Niladri Mondol. Niladri Mondol is a great designer and front-end developer. So the website which you can just find out by checking jwc.tech, the whole front end is built by Niladri. So a big shout out to Niladri that and we really got like a huge number of feedbacks about our website that the website is actually looking very cool. So kudos to Niladri for building such a nice and clean website. And yeah, we also have Shreya Paul. Shreya Paul is handling all the sponsorship and other things. We have Aman Prakash Jha. Aman Prakash Jha is also the lead of GFG student chapter JGEC. We also have Shagnik. Shagnik Roy is the ML expert, and he is also managing the all the communication channels. That means he's handling the Discord and the email part, the queries which are getting in email. So yeah, that's a great team. And there are also few names like not every actually heroes wear cap, right? So there are other few names who some of our seniors actually helped us to organizing this year's JWOC. So it actually started like 2 years back. It is the third edition. So it actually started 2 years back by one of our seniors who actually like just took the initiative to start open source event for that was specifically for our college, because back in then as Harsh also mentioned, there were not like a very large number of beginner friendly open source events. So but now we have like different open source events for the beginners. So back into the 2000 back in 2020, one of our seniors named Shudipta Ghosh, who is currently working at JP Morgan Chase, Glasgow, UK. So he is also the Google Summer of Code mentor for 2020 and 2021. So he actually took that initiative and he started that JWOC uh, with his team. So last year we also organized JWC, and Shreya also mentioned the statistics. And last year we had some of our seniors in the organizing team, and they helped us this year also to like to organize the whole event, like starting from the how we can approach sponsors and how we can just do marketing things and other things. So we have Chirag Kakkar Bhaiya, we have Jogesh Cha Bhaiya, and we have Shruti Di, we have Utkarsh Bhaiya, and so on. So yeah, a big thanks to all of them, and hope we can just manage to do things correctly throughout the whole time period. And if you have any doubts regarding how you can you can just go through the student manual or the mentor manual. Those are present in our website, and you can just get a brief idea about how the scoring system works and how you can make pull request. And you can definitely check out some resources regarding GitHub, web development. We have posted all of this in our resources channel in the Discord. So, Harsh, we also got one question for you. I have a question about how to write a good proposal. Currently, I am part of Summer of Bitcoin.
Again, I don't have any idea about some other Bitcoin, but every kind of proposal making follows the same kind of process. You need to understand the code base, you need to understand the requirements, and you need to structure the uh, like proposal in such a way that exactly showcases on what you are trying to achieve. So if you'd like to have a good resource, perhaps the best one would be to check out the Google Summer of Code archives. This is an organization that we created last year just to archive all of the proposals that we have written or all of the kind of things that we have done. So just give me a moment. I'm trying to find it up. So it contains all of the proposals that we have like written over the years. and you can particularly use it for developing your own understanding. So let me share my screen. So here we have the Google Summer of Code archive. You can check out our proposals archive right here. And you can check out the proposals for the year 2020 and 2021. So it would be great, Niloy, if you can drop this link on the comments here. I'm sharing it with you, and you can like let everyone know. So just go ahead and check out any particular proposal. Like if I go for KDE, I can check out Anjani's proposal. Anjani is a great open source contributor, and he wrote this proposal to basically port DigiCam to Qt6 on Linux. So you can see exactly how his proposal has been structured here, what his implementation details has been, uh, and rest of the stuff along with the particular timeline in which he will be like developing this project. So in my opinion, like Summer of Bitcoin has been quite model on Summer of Code as well by Google. And this is to the point that people who are quite good on code forces and code chef, I guess, and also who have done Google Summer of Code prior to this, they're automatically selected into Summer of Bitcoin's proposal period. So I would say like they might be following a similar proposal kind of structure. So you can just have a look over here and you can see exactly what goes behind a successful proposal. But trust me, maintainers just use this as a benchmark to exactly see how your planning skills are. Most of the kind, like the kind of work, the kind of conversation you have, that will eventually determine whether you will be successful or not. I have never seen someone who was successful just through their proposal. They might have made some prior contribution. They might be communicating with their mentors before. Proposal is just a way to basically put the whole structure into a proper plan. So just treat it as it is.
Great. So I think you got like the person who just posted the question, he or she got the answer. And we have like maybe the last question for today's session. And it is, as you all know, GSOC is during the summer. So is doing an internship for GSOC is better during the period?
Why not do both?
Yeah.
So this is this is something that every G Soccer was guilty about back in 2021. So we have this like internal group, we have this like server where we talk about things, and we have like G Soccer's talking about like uh, someone had some internships, so they were like thinking on how exactly are we going to balance both of them. Some of them were looking for internships, so it was kind of like a mismatch situation. So if you have an already an internship offer, trust me, it is very manageable. Google Summer of Code has some specific time commitments. If you're going for a medium sized project, it won't take more than 17 hours per week for you to work on that. Just to compare it with a full time job, on a full time job, you have to dedicate almost 40 hours. So you can like just give 17 hours to your GSOC project, and you just need to work on a proposal basis. You don't exactly need to spend 17 hours working on that GSOC project alone. If you manage to implement all of the features, all of the bug fixing, and everything prior to this, it is all cool. Mentors and the maintainers will be judging on the basis of whether you complete the project or not by how much time you're spending on this, because they won't be putting a time tracker on you. The same thing goes for internships. I have seen people who were doing GSOC and they were interning at multiple companies. One was interning at HackerRank, someone was interning at some big tech company, and all of that. Even I got an internship at Quansight. So just to give a background, Quansight is a US-based consultancy service, and it is like the CEO of Quansight is Travis, and Travis is a creator of NumPy and SkyPy. So we are a pretty much open source company, and everyone in this company is an open source developer. So my GSOC experience got me to Quansit, and I was kind of managing both of them at the same time. So if you already have an internship offer, maybe do both. But if you think that you have some specific time commitments, you won't be like able to dedicate that much, I would really say go for internship. Google Summer of Code is something that you can do the next year as well if you have like more bandwidth and more experience. But internship sort of brings an employability factor because you have a firm experience on your resume, on your portfolio, and you can easily use that to get a full-time job. And right now, getting a full-time job is a luxury for most of the people. So don't bet on that. If you have a good internship, maybe you're like getting to work at a big tech company, and this internship will be crucial for you to get a dream job. Don't compromise on that. So just grab that internship and maybe let someone else be a part of the Google Summer of Code.
Yeah, and I think this year Google Summer of Code has also released that criteria that you should be a student. So if you are also a working professional, you can definitely participate in Google Summer of Code as a student developer. So that's that means that if you just pass out from your college, that's not the ending. You can definitely participate in cool summer of code while you are also a working professional. Great. So I think we have already covered all the questions, and we have discussed so many things about open source. And I hope our audience has like gained some kind of very insightful thoughts from you. And yeah, if you have not registered for JWOC yet, you can definitely check out jwc.tech. And the registrations will be closing soon. That means we have already closed the mentor registrations, but the mentee registration is still open, but it will close today. That means in today midnight. So if you have not registered yet, just go to jwc.tech and just register for the event. And there are so many good things which we are going to organize during JWOC. That means there will be some mini events during JWOC in which you can participate and you can win something or you can learn something new. So over to you, Sreya, now.
Thanks, Nilay. I would just like to thank you all for joining the event. I would like to thank Harsh for being a part of this inauguration ceremony. Thanks for joining. To the audience, I would just like to say one thing more. I'll just present my screen. Yeah. So please to check out our website. If you have any problem, please feel free to contact us. Also, this is our contact details. Also, we have our projects uploaded. Please go and check the projects and feel free to contribute. We also have our Discord channel, which our mentors and mentees have already joined. To all the mentors and mentees, I would like to say, let's have a great coding event for the next 1 month, and let's see the results. We'll wait for the results and see who comes in the leaderboard, tops the leaderboard. So yeah, we have great prizes for everyone. With this, I would like to end our session for today. And thank you everyone for joining. Once again, thanks Harsh for joining our event and being a part of this event. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining.